Hey everybody, welcome to episode 87 of the Is That Normal podcast. And hey, it's good to be back.
Man, it is good to have you back. Our last episode, you weren't able to be with us, but we did pull you from the interwebs out of the archives,
right.
and you got to join me as we recast an older episode about rites of passage, and we got to drink coffee in that episode.
Yeah,
which
we maybe should bring that back.
We should bring that back. Yes, we should. That would be good. So, but today we're going to talk about helping people find help. So, Randall, are you a person who it's easy for you to ask for help?
Ooh. I would say for me it depends on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
There are areas where I have no issue at all asking for help, especially if it's an area that I know I don't know about. Where I tend to have more trouble is areas that I feel like I should be more knowledgeable about or should be an expert in.
Yeah.
I have a harder time, and that's probably a pride thing, but I have a harder time asking for help in some of those areas.
That's really well said. I'd say for me, I definitely have grown in this area, but as a whole, I'm not really good at this. I tend to either think I can do more than I can, or my biggest probably barrier though is not wanting to bother other people.
Yeah.
I should be able to figure this out on my own, do this on my own. I don't need to bother someone else for things that should be my responsibility. And I've learned that that's not really a healthy way to look at things, and so I'm trying to grow at it, but not always the best. But what I have started to find out though is if I need help, I need to ask for it. I need to ask for it early before things get out of hand. That's the best case scenario. You don't try, and then suddenly you got 3 things on fire, and then you call for help.
The Mayday.
Right, yeah. It would be better not to get to the Mayday call, right?
And I've had a few of those, hey, I've got things when it comes to home improvement things or things like that. You try to tackle something, and then you think you keep running into issues and think you can fix it until you've got a way bigger problem than you started with, and then when you have to make that call, it's a little more difficult.
Very, very true. So, but one area where it is particularly important to ask for help and ask early is that of mental health, and I know that's a topic that a lot of us maybe deal with or know loved ones that deal with, but we don't like to talk about it. It's sort of a almost taboo subject because, again, we feel like we don't want to admit that maybe we need help with our emotions or our mental practices, but often, really, probably all of us need help with that in one way or another. And so today we're going to just talk to parents about some ways to help their children ask for that help that they need.
Well, we are really glad that you've joined us. And if you're new to the podcast, we encourage you just to check out the website, isthatnormal.org, and maybe learn a little bit more about us. You can check out some other episodes. Episode 1, that's a good place to start. It's kind of an introduction about
why we do what we do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then another one, episode 83, of some great information about what parents need.
Yeah.
And so those are some good places to start. So Mark, as we jump into today's topic, why do you think parents need to know how to find help for their children?
Yeah, mental health is a really complex issue. It's not really simple, and it's not maybe as easy to know or diagnose as we would think, and people have different opinions about what mental health means, but mental health just simply means how healthy am I mentally. So we all have some status of our mental health, whether it's good or bad or in between, or whether it's off the rails, but it's really complex, and we know that when we face difficult, disruptive, or unstable situations, that is going to impact our mental health. It's going to force us to have to think about things, react to things, and if we're not being really intentional about them, we're going to react maybe and think maybe in ways that are unhealthy. And if you let those habits of unhealthy responses go over time, we can get to a place where our reactions don't match our circumstances, and that's where we get into a mental health crisis. And so, so as we think about that, have you experienced, Randall, any difficult, disruptive, or unstable situations, say last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that I've been on both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah.
And so, I was just having a conversation with some good friends the other night and talking even a little bit about some of my past and history and things like that. And just as I've gotten older, even recognizing how some of those things have affected me in ways I didn't realize, and how I respond to things and how I handle certain situations or don't handle certain situations. And so, there's so many different factors that play into mental health. And
it's really interesting. I know for me, several things in that. One, just the last 2 years of pandemics and social crises
Absolutely.
and political climate and all of these things that are going on has forced me, particularly as a leader, to have to make a lot of new and different and difficult decisions over and over again. Mm-hmm. And that's really created what some people are calling like decision fatigue.
Yeah.
And I've had to really watch my own emotions and mental health over that, because when you get to that place where you're fatigued, you start responding in unhealthy ways. And I know for me, as someone who's intentional and mindful of these things, and I have struggles that so many other people who aren't paying attention to those things, I mean, it's really can get really blown up. But the other side of that is that our brains are strange, and the way that makes connections is really interesting. And we found, particularly with grief, dealing with loss, that when I have a loss of some sort, you think you're dealing with this, but all these other things that are in the background that you've never dealt with or you haven't thought about in 25 years, they come out and pop up, and you don't know why. And so you think you're responding to this when really you're dealing with this, and it becomes really tricky. Mm-hmm. And so I like what you share there, is that, when we have situations that press us and stress us, suddenly things that maybe are from my past, maybe things I haven't thought about or worked all the way through, those start impacting today's decisions. Yeah. And that's where if we don't ask for help and we don't ask for it early, that's where those things become, dumpster fires.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you talk about the last couple of years, one of the things that I think I see, even in people who I would consider to be emotionally and mentally healthy individuals, one of the things that, happens in our life typically, until the last couple of years, is, circumstances ebb and flow. There's good and there's bad, and there's always that kind of hope for the things are going to get better. And I think there's been the last 2 years, there's been so much uncertainty and so much messaging of, we don't know if there's an end in sight. And so just that, I think there's a lack of hope of even just our circumstances here, that things are going to improve and get better. And so even people who, like I said, I would consider emotionally and mentally healthy, begin to struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, so when we start thinking about our children, if you study Western youth and children culture, like researchers have been watching patterns of children for decades and decades and decades, and particularly over the last probably 2 to 3 decades, they've seen an upswing in mental health occurrences, like abnormal, depression and anxiety and those things in young people. But if you go back to 5 years ago, there's this sharp upturn that starts happening that's just been magnified by the last couple years. And so, before, like you say, that we start just saying, well, everything is hopeless and there's no respite. And, I want us to realize that's not necessarily all bad, because it gives us an opportunity. When we see that there's a problem like that and that there's a struggle like that, it's an opportunity for us to help our young people make better and different choices. And really, a lot of times, the best change in our life comes in those moments of difficulty and disruption and crisis. That can be a greenhouse for them, learning and growing about what's healthy and how to respond to situations in life, and what really does last and where hope really comes from. But we've got to help them toward those healthy responses. That's not going to happen naturally. That's something that we have to do as parents and concerned adults.
Yeah, and one of the great things that I will say over the last, especially the last couple of years, maybe as a result of kind of what we've come through, but I definitely see society as a whole, but especially the church, probably maybe taking a little bit more, recognizing that as an issue and bringing it to light a little bit more than maybe we have as a whole in the past, and recognizing that, like you said, mental health, there's a stigma, or has been a stigma attached to it, but just recognizing that it's part of our overall physical health as well, and there's so many factors that play into that. And so I feel like for the church has really taken a step forward in recognizing that and understanding that it's something that we need to address.
That's really good, because I think there's some cliche responses out there that we just have to be really aware of and make sure that we avoid, the suck it up and do better response, or the if you had more faith response. I mean, those are not healthy. That's not what we're dealing with. There's something bigger and more complex that we need to unfold.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. So what are some of the first things that we need to do?
I think with particularly as parents or adults that are around young people on a consistent basis, you need to be observant and learn how to ask good questions. So as you watch kids and you start maybe noticing some concern or some behaviors that you're just wonder what's going on, we just need to be aware of that, have that on our radar. We don't need to hit the panic button, but we need to start figuring out, so how can I probe a little bit and figure out what's going on? So I just got a list of some really good questions, and we'll put these in our notes too. But so just ask the kid, hey, what's one of the biggest things that are challenging you right now? Like what's something going on in your life that's maybe hard or an obstacle, or maybe even it's not always bad things. Sometimes it's like, is there a big goal you're trying to achieve right now, or is there something you're hoping to happen in your life and you're waiting for it to happen? Just kind of start probing that. And I try when I ask questions, and sometimes even people hear the question wrong, so you have to restate it. But I don't want to ask them what the best or the worst or the biggest, but hey, what's one thing that you're dealing with right now? Because sometimes when we make things, that's high stakes when you say the biggest or the worst, and we just want to hear a little bit. And so maybe they might share with you something that's not even really the issue first, but at least you got them talking, and you begin unpacking those things. And when they do share something with you, say, hey, so how do you feel about that, or what are you experiencing emotionally in regard to that situation? Are you happy? Are you joyful? Are you expectant? Are you anxious? Are you nervous? I mean, kind of maybe even help them with words if they don't have them to identify. And have your feelings changed about that over time? Like do you feel differently now than you used to feel about that? And help them to see maybe where they're heading. I can see where I was here, now I'm here. That's really good questions. And then I think we need to turn this to the bigger picture for them and ask them, so where do you think God's at?
Yeah.
Where do you think he is at in the midst of all of this? And how do you think that what does he think or feel about what you're experiencing? Is he aloof? Is he distant? Is he hurting along with you? Like what do you think God is? Because we want to lead them to understand that God's present with them through whatever they're facing. But you can't just tell them that.
Right.
They've got to discover that a little bit. And then some really great questions. I like these last three questions here. So what kind of help do you want with this? And if they tell you I don't want any help, then maybe you back off. And then just keep being observant. Or maybe they have something really key that you wouldn't expect for them to say. And then you're like, okay, great. Well, let's get on that, And another one is, who else would you want to talk about with this? And this is really important, I think, for parents to realize that you don't have to answer this all on your own, that you're not alone in this. We'll talk about that more here in a minute. But ask them who's somebody that's safe that they'd talk more about that with. And don't feel offended or, by that. Man, it takes all of us to do this. And we're in this together. And then what is one step you can take right now in this situation or with your reaction? And I think that's good, because I think for all of us, particularly for young people, sometimes things become so huge, they don't know what to do with it. But we've got to help them realize, you just got to take one step. And so what's the next best step for you to take? And we don't have to worry about all the next steps. So let's just take one step, and then let's take a breath and reevaluate. And so sometimes helping them break that down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really good questions.
And we've talked about on here on this podcast many times that children are still developing and growing. So we know, and we've had some laughs at, but in that realm, the things that maybe could be potential triggers are also things that sometimes are just part of adolescence and part of learning and growing and understanding, and kids say and do weird things sometimes. And so how do we begin to differentiate and know when maybe we need that additional help, and maybe there is something going on beyond just typical adolescence?
Right, and I push us back to that be observant step, and just keep watching and keep cataloging things. And you make a good point. If we see our children responding in an abnormal way to normal life situations, that's an alert.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we're ready for like step 10 of taking action about this. That's just an alert, And so some other symptoms to maybe watching for is, have they had major changes in behavior or mood recently? Not just one day, that's a bad day, but, kind of seeing a pattern of some change. Do they exhibit signs of hopelessness or numbness or extreme lethargy? Like, are they just they seem to have no energy, no drive, no direction, especially if that's a difference from what you've experienced before. Are they experiencing unfounded fears? Are they, whether by their actions or things they're telling you, really anxious about certain situations that they hadn't been in the past, or that doesn't seem to be a reasonable fear? Like, why would you be afraid of that kind of a question? And are they just having trouble doing normally daily behaviors? Are they having trouble getting up? Are they having trouble eating? Are they having trouble sleeping? Are they having trouble finishing their homework or focusing? Or so as you start noticing these things, and you start seeing that there's several of these, it's time to kind of push in and have some deeper conversations and try to dig into the bottom of what's happening. And especially if they're feeling those things, they probably don't know why they're feeling that way. So you're gonna have to why are you so down, or why are you so moody? Then they're just gonna be resistant, just say, so hey, what's one of the most difficult things you're gonna have to do this week? Just kind of try to lead into that a little bit. Another thing when you start noticing that is maybe suggest a break for them from some things that maybe are part of that negative loop. Whether it's hey, let's take a break from watching the news, or hey, maybe you need to take a break from that intense show you're binging on Netflix for a little while, or maybe we need to dial back some social media time, or maybe there's even certain groups of people or friends that, hey, if they're kind of having this impact on you, let's just take a breath, and let's take a weekend and stay home, and let's reset a little bit. So those are some things that maybe we can help them with.
So as we kind of take those steps and we try to probe a little deeper and get a little bit more information, and what happens, what do we do then if that persists, and we've kind of tried some of those things and we really see that there maybe is a deeper problem going on there?
I think we've noticed several of those behaviors, and we've tried to address it, and maybe even tried to help them with that next one step, and it's just still difficult. If a couple 3 weeks go by and we're just still on this slope downward in some of those behaviors or reactions, I think it's probably time to invite somebody else into the discussion. Find somebody else who could maybe give some perspective or help with that.
So who would be, who's a good, where do we start with that? Who do we reach out to?
So first of all, before I maybe answer that, and some of these are going to come from this, I just want to mention Dr. Eddie Moody, who we've had at our church. He's the director of our National Free Will Baptist Association, but he is also a clinical psychologist, and he wrote this fantastic book called First Aid for Emotional Hurts, that really for parents or adults who work with young people would be a really good book to read and have as a reference, because he talks first of all about how we can be good first responders and what that looks like and what that means, but then he really gives you a lot of ideas on what to identify, what kind of help is available, why that help's important, and he really, that book helped me get a clearer, more reasonable view of how medical practices and faith and me as a parent can all kind of work together. That it doesn't have to, they're all part of, can all be together a part of a solution. But maybe a first place to go is just to talk to a pastor or one of the leaders at your church who work with young people, we would love to be a part of a conversation and a great first place. We won't have all the answers, but we could help you connect with maybe what's going the next step that you need. And so that's a good place to start. Finding a good Christian counselor is a good thing. And again, we want to get help, and we want to get it early. So we don't want to wait until we've had some sort of a crisis to get there. Right. I mean, if we start seeing things that our kids are dealing with and they don't quite have the tools to deal with it, there's nothing wrong with having a counselor, and it doesn't have to be a forever thing, but let's find someone to help us talk through some healthy ways to respond to these things.
And just as we want to get past the stigma of mental health being something that we don't talk about, that should we don't deal with. Same thing even for parents. Issues with mental health or things like the things we're talking about are not tied to your performance as a parent or your and so there can be a stigma to that of saying, well, this means I'm a failure as a parent. And like I said, we've talked about all of these different things that play into this.
In the last 2 or 3 years, I've read so many books by really well-known, really successful pastors who I respect and who have been influenced in my life, who've all talked about how vital and critical it was for them at stages in their life to go and seek professional counseling.
Yeah.
That they needed help to sort through issues and respond better. This is not something it's not something to keep behind closed doors or to feel bad about. If we have a medical problem, we want to seek the help that's going to get us better. Yeah. And if I have a emotional mental health problem, I need to seek help that's going to get me better. And spiritual things are a part of that.
Yeah.
But there's also some other tools that maybe we need to consider. And so, so medical doctors are a good place to go if you're seeing things happen with kids. A lot of times, some of these reactions, I mean, some of it is hormones because they're an adolescent,
Right.
And this is normal, and, but you need someone else to kind of help that and them know that these are normal things, that they're not experiencing something out of the ordinary. And sometimes we've got imbalances in our body that a medical doctor can identify and help us to get back in balance. And so that's why, medication, while it's not the solution, and we don't want to just cover up symptoms, sometimes it can help us get back in balance so we can get healthy.
Yeah.
And that's with all sorts of things with us physically. And then also a medical doctor is going to be a good first place. If we would need to go on to something more like a psychiatrist or psychologist, they're going to be the pathway to get there if we've got some really extreme issues that need dealt with. So, and we have got a great list of some contacts on counselors and some of these kind of things for our area. So if you're a parent or an adult in our area that would like some help finding that, just reach out to us, and we'd love to help connect you with that. So, yeah.
So what about fostering like health habits and responses, maybe ahead of some of those more escalated situations? What are some things that we can do to maybe try to prevent some of those things before they get to that critical point?
Yeah. So the great news is that we have great tools available to us as humans and as parents and as adults in young people's lives. And so these are some things that you need to start doing yourself and then doing along with and showing your kids how to do. And number one is pray. Yeah. God is a God who's near us. God is a God who knows our heart. He knows our emotions. He knows our physiology. And we just need to invite him into what's going on in our life and cry out to him, ask him for help, and then teach our kids how to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's this like chicken and egg thing with this, but hey, you might not feel like it, but just try telling God what you're feeling. Try asking God to help you. It can't hurt you, kind of leading your kids into that. And then, reading and meditating on God's word. One of the things that we don't want to do is use God's word either as a club or as a let's find the solution answer book. That's not really what it's for. What it's for is us to get to know God, and that takes time. Mm-hmm. So to help our kids create a consistent reading, and more than reading, just like, let's let these words help us figure out who God is and who we are. And so we need to take time and absorb that. And so, and when we get a clear picture of who God is and who we are in view of who God is, that's going to help us not worry about some of the things that cause us to worry.
Yeah.
So that's a good habit. And then engaging with the church, which we're going to have an upcoming episode here in a month or so, talking about what engagement looks like for people and our parents particularly. And so, but the church is a wealth of resource. And again, when you ask that question, who else is somebody you might want to talk to about this? It'd be really good if it was somebody they're connected to because of church, whether it was just another concerned adult or a youth leader or somebody like that. So you need to be engaged so they have other adults in their life to help.
Yeah.
And then just helping them foster healthy relationships with you, with those in your house, and with those outside the house. Just working on relationships. I mean, that's going to be the foundation of us feeling some of that health.
And we've talked about this in previous episodes where, the more you can kind of establish that open line of communication with your child early, then one, I think it's going to be that much easier to recognize when there is truly something deeper going on and differentiate between this is just, part of growing and those things, and when there's really something else going on. And also it makes it a lot easier to be able to ask those questions and have that open line when you aren't just starting that when you think there's something going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, very good.
Yeah. So as we wrap up today, our two takeaways. The first is just spend some time observing and listening. And like we just said, that's a great way, even and maybe especially if you don't feel like there's a problem right now, it's never too early to start doing that and establishing that so that
question of, hey, what's something challenging in your life right now? That should just be a question we ask all the time.
Yeah.
Like that shouldn't be because you notice something's wrong. That should just be like, we want to know what's going on and how we can help you and how we can come alongside you.
Yeah.
So, great question.
And start some of those healthy habits that we talked about. And the second is don't be afraid to reach out for help, and do it early. Don't wait for, to use the home renovation analogy. Don't wait till, pipes are spraying in the air and you've got major issues before you start looking for some help. Yeah. Do that early. Be abnormal.